Welcome, everyone. I now call the February 10th, 2026 regular City Council meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. At this point, we'll take a moment to take roll call of the council members by position number. Please say here when the city clerk calls your name.
Thank you, Mayor Thompson. Councilmember Onguluri.
Here.
Mayor Thompson.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Alderks.
Here.
Councilmember Kurd.
Here.
Councilmember Miles.
Here.
Councilmember Dodd.
Here.
Councilmember Alcabra.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. First up is meeting agenda approval. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we'll go to public engagement opportunities. You can join a city board or commission. Applications are now open for City of Bothell boards and commissions. Make a difference in your community and bring your perspective to local issues. No prior experience needed. Applications are due by 4 p.m. on February 20th. You can please complete the 2026 community survey. Join the Bothell Library and the City of Bothell to celebrate Lunar New Year.
That's Lunar New Year.
That's Lunar New Year. You should also complete the survey, though. All are welcome to enjoy McFi Lion Dance, Chinese story time, and more. It's Saturday, February 14th, 2 to 4 p.m. at the Bothell Library. I was just thinking, this is the coolest survey that I have ever heard of in my entire life. Yeah. All right, the Wayne Open Space Action Plan survey is now open to help shape the future design and vision for this important community space. Take about 10 minutes to share what you'd like to see for the future of Wayne Open Space. The survey is open through February 15th, and I still need to take that too. We have one proclamation for Lunar New Year. Whereas Lunar New Year is a significant observance celebrated in Asian cultures, including Chinese, Vietnamese, Taiwanese, Korean, Malaysian, and Singaporean communities across the world, is a time of renewal, reflection, and hope for the year ahead. And whereas Lunar New Year marks the beginning of the year using the traditional Chinese lunisolar calendar, typically observed in late January or early February, and whereas this serves as a time to usher in good fortune and good wishes with the new year and celebrate the diverse and dynamic communities that make Bothell beloved. And whereas Lunar New Year customs vary across countries and regions, though many include gathering with family and friends, honoring elders and ancestors, enjoying traditional foods, exchanging gifts of money, participating in traditional dances, and preparing for the year to come by cleaning house. And whereas the City of Bothell is deeply committed to recognizing and celebrating the many cultural contributions of Asian and Asian American community members that make Bothell a welcoming community to live, work, learn, and play. Now, therefore, I, Mason Thompson, Mayor of the City of Bothell, do hereby proclaim February 17th, 2026 as Lunar New Year in the City of Bothell and encourage our community members to show support and solidarity to our Asian and Asian American friends, family, and neighbors as we embark on this new year. And I believe we have some community members here to accept.
Hello, and thank you. Thank you to the mayor and the deputy mayor, city council, and all of our guests tonight, and a special thank you to Gabby for this invitation. My name is May May, and I work at the Bothell Library. I was just speaking with some people out in the lobby. This is my 27th year working in Bothell, and I love that we are doing this proclamation process, especially celebrating New Year, Lunar New Year. I want to echo the proclamation's words on the meaning and importance of Lunar New Year to so many people around the globe, including here in Bothell. And the words evoke for me personally so many memories and funny recollections of my own family traditions around Lunar New Year, the ones I loved as a child that focused on eating in abundance, gathering with family and friends, laughing, playing, and if you've ever seen the lucky red envelope, if you're a child at Lunar New Year, you actually get money in a red envelope. I was not so fond of cleaning house or getting a haircut at Lunar New Year, though. So I'm very happy that the Bothell Library and the City of Bothell are sponsoring events celebrating Lunar New Year this Saturday. You can come spend your Valentine's Day with McFi Lion Dance and stay for Chinese Storytime in Mandarin. And if you aren't able to join us this weekend, I want to encourage you to please check out our library or any public library at any time. Libraries carry on the tradition of books, collections, and stories, and we offer services focused on all age groups, from newborns to older adults. That includes story times that feature the joy of reading and the importance of early literacy. We have programs that support teens academically, socially, and emotionally, and give them a chance to contribute and be part of their own community. We have programs for adults that range from the arts to artificial intelligence, from English language learning to tax help, that's very popular right now. And adults, this spring, you can look forward to a plant swap at the library and a pop-up arcade when we have a revival of the 90s. We have a program for adults where we'll celebrate the 90s. Our physical collections and our electronic collections are broad and deep, and they're available in so many formats, including ebooks and streaming. They're, of course, available in English, but they're also available in over 20 languages that are spoken and read throughout King County. And then when I reflect on the public library, even if I didn't work there, I love what libraries represent, what we stand for, and what we have. We're a place of ideas and information exchange. We're centers of connections and resource sharing. For me, a library is a place of wonder where you can find serendipity, opportunity, and access. And above all, a library is a place where all are welcome. So I want to thank you tonight for this opportunity, and join us for Lunar New Year on Saturday. 恭喜发财，新年快乐. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up is public comment. The city has accepted public comment in writing as well as accepted signups for those who wish to speak at tonight's meeting. Written comments submitted to the city clerk no later than 3 p.m. today were forwarded to all city council members and are part of the record. When the clerk calls your name, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Please note that council will receive your input, but we do not engage in discussion of these topics. Staff will make note of items requiring follow-up. City clerk?
Thank you, Mayor Thompson. We did receive 3 written comments. The first one's from Tamara Wood, who's also here to speak this evening, I believe, signed up for public comment. Whitney Nagenborough signed up, provided written comment regarding the Wainitas Mamish project and the Urban Forest Management Plan. And Ishani Kashik Hopkins wrote in support of municipal resistance protection for ICE activity. With that, I will call on Tamara Wood. And if anybody else in the audience wishes to speak while she's coming up to the podium, if you're in the virtual audience, please use the raised hand function and we will panel you in. And if you're here in the audience, we'll give you the opportunity as well if you wish to speak. You'll have 3 minutes.
Okay. Hi. I am coming to you today to ask the council to move beyond our passive welcoming policy to real preemptive action of municipal resistance that protects the constitutional rights and due process of all individuals, regardless of their skin color, immigration status, or accents. I have submitted a letter co-signed by 71 individuals from our community who expect more from our city, people who want to move beyond signs and whistles to codify our values in action. Within this letter, we are demanding the city of Bothell use its legal authority to create policies that intercept, block, protect, and defend. Intercept unmarked agents by dispatching local police to verify their authority. Law enforcement being knowledgeable about ICE activity is critical. Untrained and unarmed people are already doing this through rapid response. And we already know what ICE is capable of when citizen bystanders get involved. Block, warrantless entry by enforcing a strict judicial warrant-only standard. ICE entering spaces with administrative warrants on civil infractions are also unacceptable. Reminding our businesses and school districts of their rights will also be a critical step towards preventing future violence in our restaurants, grocery stores, and schools. Protect our city-owned public spaces by banning ICE from staging in our parks and city-owned property. People deserve to know that they can show up to our multicultural nights, play soccer, drop off their kids at school, and go to City Hall without being stalked or harassed by ICE agents. Defend due process by making first responder stations sanctuary sites of last resort. Designate Bothell police and fire stations as constitutional protection zones. If a resident feels followed or threatened by unidentified vehicles, these stations must serve as sites of last resort. Within these zones, the city guarantees that no custody transfer to federal agents will occur without a valid judicial warrant signed by a judge. These common sense policies translate our welcoming values into concrete actions, drawing inspiration from similar emerging policies in Seattle, Olympia, and Spokane. They are fundamentally based on our constitutional rights to utilize our resources to intercept, inform, protect, and document all interactions into the public record. This documentation is crucial so that when the time comes to prosecute these agents of terror, we have the necessary information available. This initiative is intended as a vital tool in our broader fight against the terror that we have witnessed across the country. While Bothell has seen very few direct sightings, these agents are staging an unincorporated Bothell close to my children's school. I fear that our communities in the city will be the next target. Please read the letter for more information, which includes references to help draft a policy that will protect our community moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Please step to the podium and state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Michael Lowry, and I've been a resident of Bothell for the past 8 years and the Greater East Side for the past 20. ICE and CBP are currently acting as lawless paramilitaries for the Trump regime. It's obvious from the videos we see online. People are ripped out of their cars and disappeared into ICE detention. Agents break into houses without judicial warrants. Children are kidnapped and used as bait. Legal observers are shot dead in the streets, and not one of these agents are being held accountable. We all see this happening most prominently in Minnesota, but it's happening to some degree everywhere, even here. And at any point, some MAGA grifter could bring Trump's attention to Western Washington, and we could be the next place this paramilitary surges to. We must be prepared. Congress has utterly failed in its duty to impeach Trump or rein in his rogue forces. The Washington State Legislature has advanced some measures this session to try and bring accountability to these agents who are operating in contravention to our Constitution, but they're not yet law, and many other parts of Woodinville City Councilwoman Michelle Evans' No Secret Police Act have died this session. With the failure of the federal government and the half measures of the state, it falls to us and our community to protect ourselves and our neighbors. A couple months ago, when this council passed Resolution 1692 affirming support for immigrants, I stood here and said that it was an important step, but a first step. Tamara, in her comment and petition, has laid out several avenues to protect the immigrant community and legal observers that are wholly within your legal right to implement. They are not meant to put our police in direct conflict with federal agents, but to try and put forward meaningful checks on their lawlessness. I also want to take some time to let the community know of actions they can take on their own. The Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network holds Know Your Rights trainings every month. Washington Neighborhood Defense and their local chapter, North Shore Neighborhood Solidarity, canvass local businesses to make sure they are equipped with their rights to handle immigration agents. And Washington Whistles, a large decentralized group of activists, have been 3D printing and distributing whistles throughout the community, which have proven their effectiveness in Chicago and Minnesota. We must come together as a community to fight back against this creeping authoritarianism. We must protect us. Thank you.
Thank you. That is all I have signed up. If anybody else wishes to speak, please step to the podium. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. And City Manager, I can give you a preview of a projected agenda discussion item based on some of the comments we heard tonight. But for now, we are moving to executive session. It is 6:14 p.m. Council will adjourn to executive session to discuss litigation or potential litigation pursuant to RCW 4230-110-1I for 30 minutes or 31 minutes, we'll say, with action expected under agenda item 9A. The council will reconvene to regular session at 6:45 p.m. All right, it is 6:45. We are back from executive session, and next up is reports, and we will kick it off with the city manager report.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. I have one brief update tonight, and then we will also have a staff report where we'll be hearing from our Community Development Department about their upcoming work plan items. As we set up for that, I just wanted to give Council an update that we received from the state and the Department of Natural Resources, specifically last week after our last meeting. As you'll recall, on October 7th, we had a staff report where we presented information about the transfer of land trust application that was submitted in order to get a land preservation for Shelton View Forest. This is in response to a council priority as well as your top legislative priority. The application period for the trust land transfer program is for the 27-29 time period, and the due date again was this last fall. So we had a few fits and starts on that. At first, we were told that the property wasn't eligible. We got that cleared up, and then you'll also many of you will recall that on November 14th we hosted Department of Natural Resources staff for a tour of the property. So the good news that I'm here to share with you tonight is we've made it through the first milestone. So not only did we get the initial review of we were back in, but now the first review has been completed and our application is still being considered. In fact, if you go to the DNR website, you can look at which applications are still active. And as Parks and Recreation Director Nick Stroop pointed out to me, if you open the Snohomish County folder, there is only one, and it is the Shelton View Forest project. So that's we won't spike the football, but that's a good sign, right? That at least it's risen to the caliber of evaluation. In that evaluation process, that's where a lot of the work that's already been done in our community is really going to pay off. They start looking for letters of recommendation, of which we had over 300 from both community members and stakeholders. And there's also an opportunity if we continue down the path and make it to the next step. This spring to summer, there would be a 15-minute presentation that the city would be able to make to the review committee. And I can assure you, if that happens, we will be back to notify council of that opportunity. So I just wanted to fill you in on that. Again, if we get through all these steps, really the next consideration would be in the next legislative cycle. But knowing it's a priority and the work that goes into it, we're thankful that we had the opportunity to get in before the deadline, and thankful that it's still up for consideration. We know it's an important element for our community. So with that, I am going to now turn things over to Christian Getz, our Deputy Community Development Director, who's also monitoring things related to our state legislative agenda, but that's not why he's here tonight. He's here to talk about how we're making all the things that have been in plans start happening. So there's a lot of work coming up for our Community Development Department, and I'm going to turn it over to Christian to tell you what we have on tap.
Thank you, City Manager. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. I've got a brief presentation tonight to run through just an update of where we're at, what we're looking to do in the next 5 years, kind of how we get there. No action required tonight. So yes, I've just got 4 quick slides. Want to talk through background and how we develop the work plan, how we developed it from last year to now. Going to run through some of the completed projects and plan documents that we've wrapped up. Look forward to the next 5 years, some of the items that'll be coming to you, so you kind of get this heads up of here's a number of study sessions that you'll be seeing and public hearings that you'll be seeing, as well as with Planning Commission and others, and then just some general next steps. So first of all, sort of how we develop this, the main primary driver of the work plan, it comes from council, comes from the council vision document, the 2040 vision, I think is what it's called. That helps us build out where we go with plan and then the subsequent code work. Recent state legislation also guides us. It directs us to update things like the critical area code last year, and we'll look to make sure that we update anything else that we've got coming, and you'll see some of those within the work plan. We've got a number of deferred projects that we had to put off while we went through the 2-year comp plan update, and then raced through everything last year, and then just some general best practices that we like to follow, making sure that we do clean things up. We look to make sure our definitions are sound. We make sure that we didn't break anything in the code or in our policies, and we just do regular regular ongoing maintenance to make sure that we're doing this as best we can. How we create the schedule, other than just general capacity with staff, we look to first and foremost completion deadlines. If we've got to complete something by the end of this year, we're going to build that out, see how many staff we need to throw at it, and then how we work through study session schedules with Planning Commission, City Council, potentially Landmark Preservation Board. If we've got shorelines, we'll look at the shoreline board inclusion or park board. So a lot of things kind of go into how we build out the schedule. Recently completed projects, we had a number of hefty accomplishments last year on both the policy side and the plan code update side. Our first climate action plan, we wrapped up a small comp plan amendment, an annual amendment, went through just general data monitoring, and then a number of code updates such as the elimination of parking minimums. We updated our middle housing codes. We created some housing affordability incentives, and a number of other ones that are found on, I think it's around page 8 of the packet tonight. Moving forward into the next 5 years, you could see within the work plan the colorful document with all the X's of kind of where they land in the quarters of 26 through 2030. We've got some significant policy work that continues on. So those are all the implementation. We don't want to create a plan, put it on a shelf, and just let it collect dust. We want to make sure that those things are ongoing. And they don't take up a ton of staff time, but they do have a lot of ongoing work that we wrap into other activities that are happening. We've got the downtown sub-area that we are currently working on. We're going to look to wrap that up this year. Canyon Park will be next. I think we put on North Creek. The North Creek sub-area will be another center area that we want to look at. And then wrapping up this year, the Housing Action Plan. And UFMP is tonight, so looking forward to closing that one out. Code work-wise, we've got all the work that comes out of those policy documents, tree code being updated after the UFMP, more affordable housing codes, more incentives, looking to make sure that we've got it dialed in to continue to seek out opportunities for development of housing. Some of the delayed items, the landmark code really needs some update. There's a few items in there that we have to clean up and straighten out based on recent state legislation. And speaking of which, legislative updates, there's a number that were passed last year that don't go into effect until maybe 27 or 28. And there's a few that are working their way around the legislation today or right now that we'll look to see what happens and when we need to respond. I kind of went through the future ones. A large one on there is the Shoreline Master Program. That's a 2029 update deadline. That's going to be about a 1.5 to 2 year project to get going. And then just some of the annual ongoing stuff. Every year we'll go through a comp plan amendment. That's where we will ensure that the policies for that plan area are up to date. As a good example would be as we go through the downtown sub-area, the downtown policies within the comp plan are likely going to have to be updated as well. We can't update the code without making sure that they're consistent with the policies. So those two go hand in hand, and likewise through any other policy work. Next steps, we want to make sure that we let you know that this is coming so that when we bring a study session, you are aware that, oh yeah, that's that transfer of development rights project that was within the work plan that we knew was coming this year. And we'll continue to work towards developing something that is strong and evergreen, trying to be proactive but also responsive where we need to be. We'll read the tea leaves as best we can to make sure that we're moving in the right direction. A lot of the work that we do takes some time. We can't just run through a quick code update. We want to go through the necessary public process, but we also want to make sure that we're engaging the community through the tools that we have, whether it's utilizing Engage Bothell, going out, doing meet and greets, walking around downtown that we'll start to do shortly, and make sure that we can involve the community as we grow together. And like I said, we'll just continue to work through this. So this was really just meant to be high level. Here's where we are. Here's what we've done. We'll be coming back with a number of study sessions throughout the year to talk around this table, make sure that we're getting your input. We'll identify how things align with the current council vision. We look forward to updates to the council vision with 2 new council members. And with that, again, no action needed. And I hope this was helpful.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. I found this very helpful. Thank you for laying it out, and for, helping just provide a kind of a roadmap for us to follow along with. I don't necessarily have any questions, just I like seeing this format and that it's been presented this way, so thank you.
Councilmember Alcabra?
I waited for you to say something, and then I pressed my button. Thank you, Christian. This is very helpful. The colorful, pretty colors, and it was really nice. Also, it's good for somebody like me. The only question I had, and it's a very minor question, is we've been putting a lot of focus over the past few years on downtown. Is there why would we not want to do Canyon Park sub-area plan first before downtown, or North Shore Creek for that matter?
Sure. Yeah. So downtown, we deferred with the comprehensive plan. We didn't want to, we didn't dive into updating the downtown, and it was on the schedule to follow that. So we have been working on it nearly this entire year, and we should wrap it up by December. That is our goal, and we'll just pick up right away with Canyon Park.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
I was just curious if there's I thank you for reminding me that this is leftover work from the comp plan stuff, so appreciate it.
I just want to say thank you for this, because it's really nice for me to have this to look back at when I start to get anxious and neurotic about when things are going to happen. So I won't harass Kyle quite as much about when some of these things are going to happen, because we've got it written down here, and I know you guys are super busy and you do great work, and I really appreciate it. So thanks for this. Like, it's really nice to just know, and appreciate you coming to us tonight too. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor, and I think that's a good reminder for me to print this off and put it behind my monitor for future. I just wanted to note in closing, too, that our community development staff, we'll probably be hearing from Christian, I imagine, will be back next week with a study session on the 2026 Comprehensive Plan private docket request. So that process is where then you'll have a decision to make on whether or not to entertain and go through the work of a potential docket request too. So you'll be hearing about a different type of work plan item next week. So thank you, Christian. Appreciate the work. With that, that completes the city manager report tonight.
All right. In that case, next up is council committee reports, community reports, and conversations. All right. In that case, we will move on to projected agenda discussion. Does anybody have another item they would like to discuss?
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Alcabra.
Yes, it's going to take a couple months. Thank you, Mayor. We heard earlier, we saw emails come through, and we heard from public commenters, and this is something in the series of actions that we can, I think it will be helpful for us as a city to discuss what further action, other than the issue we're going to be discussing later tonight, what further action we can take as a city to protect our residents. And I would like to propose that we have perhaps another study session to discuss the items that were mentioned earlier this evening. And that's regarding the ice, protecting against ice, just to be specific.
Councilmember Dodd.
Thanks. Thank you, Councilmember Alcabra. And I agree. I think we should take a look at it, and I especially appreciated the call out to similar efforts in Seattle, Spokane, and Olympia, and if we can understand what is working in other cities, and also just every tool we have available, I think is really important right now. So a hearty second, I guess.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. I would ask Councilmember Alcabra, would this be in addition to the agenda item that's on our agenda tonight? So we would still go forward with the agenda item tonight and then revisit? Okay, and okay, that's what I just want to understand. Thank you.
Councilmember Curd?
Thanks. I will third.
So that is the three notes of support that we would need. And I just want to clarify from what I've heard. So from Councilmember Alcabra, noted specifically the actions called out in the email and public comment. And the next step would be is that we would have schedule a study session for council discussion on them. I do want to just clarify if there's any expectations from not just the three who spoke up, but any of the council members of what would be included or what would help you to have that discussion. If you need it, obviously we can do some analysis. I heard Councilmember Dodd, you mentioned around lessons learned from other cities. So we can be looking at what lessons around the actions that were specified by the resident. But if there's anything else that you want us to look at, we can. I would also just like to offer, because we do have a related study session tonight, if something comes up in that study session, I never want people to think that there's a procedural book of where the scope of this needs to open and close here. And so if there is anything that comes up in the study session later where you would like to look at connected actions or have more information come back, that's certainly possible too. But if there's anything on your mind now, I just wanted to get it out so that as we start formulating and trying to bring something back in the next few weeks, that we don't leave anything off.
I would just say I really like the call out. I don't remember who it was, of looking at what other cities have done and seeing what's out there. But I would just say, let's look at what we can do and let's try to do everything that we can do. And we'll be leaning on Eileen a lot for that. Let's figure out what we can do to help protect our residents, and then let's do those things.
That letter does have a long list of references in there also that might be helpful in addition to other cities. So.
And I just want to encourage, like, I'm thinking of Deputy City Manager call. I want all legal options that we can use to protect our residents. So thank you.
I agree as well. Thanks, Rami, Councilmember Alcabra, to bringing it up, and I agree.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. Would it be helpful to have a small subcommittee like we did last time, or no? Would you want to bring it up next time when?
No, that's a great question. So just to frame that, as you may recall, that with the study session we're going to have tonight, in between the request and the study session, we did have an ad hoc committee of 3 who met with staff to see if we were on the right track of responding to the question. I think, in light of the fact that I don't anticipate these questions and requests, unfortunately, I don't see them going away. If that is something that council would like to consider, is to have a more standing rhythm of meeting in subcommittees, or as items do come up, we're certainly happy to support that. So that you can decide that now, or we can decide that as part of the study session. But definitely something that I think there is value of. At the end of the day, just to put it out there, my biggest concern is that because there is urgency and sensitivity to these topics, that there might be an expectation that we don't anticipate, and then having an opportunity to discuss them to make sure we're getting it right is greatly appreciated.
There might be we used to have a public safety committee. I don't know if it falls under that umbrella, or maybe we can expand the scope of that committee.
Yeah, I mean, I think as the decision was made to not have that go forward, one of the things I would have asked if that committee was brought back would be for that committee to define with better clarity what the intent was. As I understood it, the previous version, the original intent was really to talk about recruiting of police officers, which I don't think was how it morphed over time. But yeah, if there would be an interest in a committee, and maybe for clarity's sake, we could figure out what to call it, and it might be different than the Public Safety Committee, but certainly there's the capacity to do it.
Okay. Would you like to do it during the study session? Is it appropriate time?
It's fine. I mean, however is best for the 7 of you to have the conversation.
Let's pick it up in the study session so I don't have to worry about calling on people.
Okay, sounds good.
Well, thank you. So we definitely hear this, and again, we'll be looking at getting something scheduled for March.
Thank you. All right, with all that, I would love to accept a motion to approve the consent agenda. Councilmember Dodd.
I'd like to move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Dodd and a second from Deputy Mayor Aldorks. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, City Clerk.
Thank you. Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Angulari,
Yes.
Mayor Thompson,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Aldorks,
Yes.
Councilmember Kurd,
Yes.
Councilmember Miles,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd,
Yes.
Councilmember Alcabra.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. And I should have spoken to the motion because I just wanted to call out and be like, we got a $4 million grant to do work on Waynita, and that is really cool. So thank you, staff, for all of your work there. All right. Next up, we have Agenda Bill 26017, the 102nd Avenue Bridge Grant Agreement. City Manager.
Thank you, council members. And yes, we know from recent experience the importance of the 102nd Avenue Bridge to our community of when we had a temporary closure. As staff will know, in terms of our federal aims has been to find as much funding as we can for all of our capital facilities projects, but certainly including 102nd Avenue Bridge. So we do have a grant opportunity before us, and are here tonight to talk to council about what's included and answer any questions you have. And there's a resolution before you for consideration. With that, I'm going to turn things over to our Public Works Director, Erin Lenhart, and she is joined by Christopher Stillwell, our Capital Projects Engineer in Public Works.
So without any further ado, good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council. I'm going to turn it over to Christopher.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and members of the Council. Thank you for having me. I'm Christopher Stillwell, Capital Project Engineer for Public Works, the project manager for the 102nd Avenue Bridge Replacement Project. And I'm here to talk to you tonight about our planning grant with the intent that you approve a resolution authorizing the city manager to sign the grant agreement with FHWA for our planning study, consistent with the rulings in King County v. Turner and California v. Duffy. I'm going to cover a little bit of general project information. I'll talk a little bit about the grant information, and then we'll go to council action and questions. So the 102nd Avenue Bridge is the city's highest bridge replacement priority, and this planning study's primary intent is to determine the type, size, and location. That involves a lot of investigation, including community outreach, and a feasibility and cost analysis to determine funding opportunities for future phases of the project. In August 2024, the city applied, in February 2024, the city applied for a planning grant through FHWA's Bridge Investment Program. We applied for a $1,080,000 grant with a local match of $275,000. In August of 2024, we were notified that we were awarded the full grant amount. In late 2025, the city joined a coalition of other local governments in challenging certain federal grant conditions imposed by the U.S. DOT and FHWA. King County v. Turner. On January 21st of 2026, the court issued an order expanding the scope of a previously issued preliminary injunction to now cover the city of Bothell as well as other local governments. Additionally, separate litigation brought by the Washington State Attorney General also enjoins some of the language advanced by U.S. DOT and FHWA. This was State of California v. Duffy. Our obligation deadline is September of 2026, and if you approve this grant, we intend to get started as soon as possible. Any questions?
Councilmember Alcabra.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Christopher. I really appreciate it. You chose one of it's the hardest, perfect time to project manage a project like this, right?
Yeah.
The question I have is, what is this $1 million, or I guess 1.3 million, 1.4 million, going to be used for?
Primarily, it's for the type size and location study, and that involves a lot of survey and geotechnical investigation. It will also involve investigation to our responsibilities for permitting and environmental concerns. It's a fairly complex project, specifically regarding maintenance of traffic. I know with the shutdown, we experienced a lot of issues with emergency management and the southern community, the senior community. And so we intend to do a lot of public outreach to gather as much information as we can and try to determine the best method for replacing the bridge. The construction method is one of the primary complexities of the project that we hope to identify. And this will help us to identify the cost more precisely to help us apply for future grant opportunities for future phases of the project.
How long is this phase?
The planning study itself should take a year or less. It'll depend on the consultant and our ability to discuss with community and permitting agencies.
Okay. Is there, if we don't get this, well, number one, if we don't get this money from this grant specifically, can we get this money? Can we allocate the budget differently as a city?
I'll go ahead and take that one, Christopher. So, yeah, thank you, Council Member. As you'll recall from the funding of our capital facilities projects, the typical funding ratio is 51 cents from outside sources to 49 cents. So what we'd be looking at then is if council wished to fund without accepting a federal grant, we would need to bring a budget amendment forward to take a look at what project would we not do in order to keep this one moving forward. Or the other option council could take is to defer any progress on the replacement of the 102nd Avenue Bridge. And there'd be more conversation than that. Obviously, there'd be deeper detail, and we'd get our finance team involved to come up with some different scenarios of what that looks like. But essentially, you would be, if we are not relying on outside funding, it cuts our capacity for projects in half.
Okay. But this one this one is $1 million that we're getting, $80 million, 80,000, right?
Correct. Yes, the grant is for $1,080,000.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We'll get it by September, if assuming everything goes as planned. Correct.
Correct.
Yeah. Or is that when the check will get cut to us by September? Is that?
That's when we will have to obligate, and yes, we will be able to start following that.
On the work?
Yes.
Okay. And do we usually start the work before, like after we get the money in our bank account, or do we have to have it in the bank account before we actually start using it? I'm just trying to understand the behind the scenes.
We get authorization to perform work that would be refundable, and then we would
And then we'll
be
get
reimbursed
reimbursement.
after.
Okay. And what's the maintenance cost today? Like if we postpone, if we decide, not to approve this, what are the alternatives? I know there's a delay of starting the project, but like how much is that going to cost, or is that already going to be built into the next budget, because there's still planning that will be complete by next year, and so the bridge has to be operational until we actually start the demolition, right? So can we if we don't get the grant this year, can we get it next year or the year after or the year after? Like what happens?
As far as planning grants, there are not many opportunities for planning grants that we're aware of. This one in particular was a 5-year opportunity that I believe the last year for applications has passed. So if we don't accept this, we will have missed this particular grant opportunity, and I don't know if it's one that will come back.
And then, Director Lenhart, could you talk a little bit about, too, the escalating costs of projects, of what comes with deferral of moving forward, and also really in the I think what I'm hearing from the council member too is in the framing of this project, we're in the early phases, that part's clear, but what are some of the remaining steps that would take place?
And I will defer some of this answer to Christopher. We've been talking about, in the event that we don't have the grant funding, there is the potential to do a reduced effort as far as the planning phase of this project. Part of the challenge with that is that it won't be as robust when it comes to cost estimating, for example. And so when we are able to pursue grant funding for the next phase, so say for the design phase, we wouldn't have as good of information about what that amount is that we're pursuing. So that's the beauty of the planning phase of a project. And it will likely take us longer if we don't have the resources to get as much consultant support for that. And Christopher can answer better probably the duration of the rest of this project that we're anticipating anyway. So we're a ways out from having a new bridge. Yeah.
Yeah, if we had the money from the grant, I would anticipate a year planning study. If we didn't have that, it would be 6 months or less of probably work that we'd be able to do, and a lot of the work that we would intend to do in this would still need to be done in order to get to a quality design. So it would be added on to a design phase that we would not have the certainty in finances that we would hope to have, and that would add to our schedule. Currently, we're planning for a 2-year design phase and probably a 1.5 to 2 year environmental phase that's a little bit concurrent, and then construction would follow probably in 2031. That's how we've currently got it planned. But if we are not able to do a full planning study, I would expect that to be pushed back at least a year or two.
Yeah.
Because it would be dependent on getting future grants.
Yeah. Yeah, because I asked those questions because we have, I'm looking at our city attorney. I don't know how much I can say and how much I can't say, but we have to weigh things. I have to weigh things. And if waiting, we're not going to get ideal. Nothing is ideal about this whole situation. But if waiting is, you still get something, even if you don't get the grant money, in my mind, I think it will be, seems to be an okay trade-off to make, given, you know, the larger context of what we're talking about. I'm thinking out loud right now. Obviously, I'm not asking a specific question, but I'm, you know, I'm thinking through things as we're going through this. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilmember Dodd.
Thank you. Do you have, off the top of your head, an amount of people that use this bridge every day and just kind of the impact? So we know from recent collisions and such what happens when it's not available to folks, but can you explain the impact of if this bridge gets damaged and it can't be repaired this time? Like, what does that look like for the city? Just a small question.
I don't have a number off the top of my head. I do know that when it was shut down, fire had to staff an aid car on the other side of the bridge, and my understanding is they didn't have great access to facilities for the staff that were over there. I know I wasn't involved much in the discussions with the senior community, but I know they were heavily impacted. My understanding is financially, as well as the folks being able to access downtown. Do you have anything to add? I can get numbers, like we have a fairly recent traffic study, and I can get those numbers pretty easily, but I just don't have them off the top of my head.
No worries. I understand why. It's adjacent to what we're talking about, but thank you.
Councilmember Anguillari.
Thank you for the information. And we are expecting to replace this in 2031, is that right? In case if all the study goes well, is that right?
That is our current schedule, correct?
Okay. If we don't take this money and if we push the timeline to the next year budget, is that okay? Like, how bad we need to get this done?
So to reiterate from the earlier example, so pushing it to the next budget is not a guarantee. So the source for this funding is from a federal grant that is no longer available to us. So while the Public Works team has been phenomenal at securing grant funding for this community, which is a great thing, and we're also anticipating when the finance director, anytime he'll give financial conditions, we'll talk about one of the biggest risks that we have is that federal money for projects is getting harder to come by in the last few years. So there's what council's task would be going forward is going to always be of looking at the list of projects that have been identified for Bothell and then allocating the available funding source. And as I mentioned in my response to Councilmember Alcabra as well, is if you eliminate federal funding, if the council decided to turn down federal funding, then your capacity to complete projects decreases by at least half. So it's not a specific answer of like how exactly would we solve it. That would be something that we would solve together though in this room.
Sure. Yeah, I'm also trying to look on the critical side, criticality of this bridge, low, medium, high in Bothell. Where do we see the criticality of this bridge? Like how critical it is for our residents, high, medium, low. Any guess?
I would say high.
Oh, okay. Then we should prioritize it.
Can I double tap? I understand, and how much can we talk about? I mean, like, I'm not city attorney. I'm sorry. I have to ask you.
Council, if you need an additional executive session, we can go back to executive session if you need additional legal information.
Can we talk about the details of the contract or no?
I can answer some questions about the contract itself if that would be helpful.
Oh.
High level.
Okay.
So as you may recall, Council, we were before you this fall with a similar but different amount, different project, but a similar conversation about accepting terms and agreements that were part of a federal contract that included language that hadn't been before us before, and that was related to the Bothell Way. And as part of the conversation around that grant opportunity, council directed the city to sign on to a couple of federal court cases. So in the motion before you tonight is there's citations to two cases, King County versus Turner, as well as California versus Duffy. And those federal cases involve injunctions around suspending requirements that are showing up in some federal agreements. Some of the things that we've been seeing or experiencing, and we talked about in the fall and are staying now as well, is addendums and different types of language embedded on websites and different things that we're doing the deep dive detail of what are the things that are required. In the case of this agreement, we have things that are different than they were a few months ago is that the city has been able to sign on to the King County versus Turner case. And with that, then we are going through a court process of finding out exactly what the federal government authority is on different contracts and agreements. Some of the language that has been of concern is related to operations of the city, including inclusion of DEI programs, as well as some other requirements. What also is a better factor that is facing agencies such as Bothell today is that in the agreement that we were discussing in the fall, there was a component of it that had to do with cooperation on immigration situations. And as I understand it, the California versus Duffy case includes an injunction on that language. The federal government went to appeal that, but actually dropped that appeal. And so they're no longer challenging that. And this agreement does not have any language related to immigration. So it's one of those things where this is, I think I remember saying in the fall, this is evolving. And we look at each agreement case by case. And to be honest with you, I think this is the type of agreement that 2 years ago would have been on the consent calendar, right? No brainer. You'd accept $1 million grant, of course. And but because of these situations, it is a weightier conversation. So hopefully that helps a little bit. But in terms of the language that's in this agreement, what the staff recommendation before you tonight is the resolution doesn't just direct the city manager to sign this agreement. We would sign it with conditions that we would add to the base template agreement that would make it clear that we're operating under the guidance of these court cases, which in a sense is saying what we would not agree to. And again, there's some wait and see that we'll have to have in terms of saying what the courts decide. And at that point, if we do not like the outcome, we would revisit, and there's always the option of repaying money, or certainly it would give us direction on whether or not to accept grants in the future as well. I hope that answers a little bit. I'm happy to clarify anything I said.
This is good. I just wanted to understand the parameters of, what we say in there versus what we say out here.
I wanted to give you something to work from.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. This is very helpful. I think the conversation of it is critical, but God forbid another two trucks. We had 2 trucks run into it last time, right? Back to back. God forbid another one hits this time. Like, it doesn't matter whether we get this grant or not. I mean, we have to drop everything and fix a critical roadway in our city. And I understand that we have to mitigate for that in the future design. My point is that we're gonna be figuring out a way to budget for it regardless of what happens. And I get the opportunity cost of you work on this, you don't work on something else. But this is a budget year, so we can have that conversation, I feel like. Also, if we decide, so it's not about the money; it's about the requirements in these new contracts that we are obligated to sign. And I feel like the other side of things is what's bothering me more. It's not. I mean, it's $1 million. We can figure out how to get it, and I understand the 50% and all that. It just. Like we talk a lot, and we share this, these values, all of us. I feel like that we value our, what we sign on to is a statement of our values, and I feel like we value the DEI programs we talked about. We value human services. We value our residents, and if it's a couple bucks, like who cares? Like that's there's no value on human life. I feel like so. You can't place a number on human life, I guess, to be more precise. So yeah, no, thank you. This is helpful, and you can see the direction I'm going with with my vote, but I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
Councilmember Kurd.
Thanks. I don't make it a habit of negotiating with bullies, so I move the recommended action to approve the resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a grant agreement with the Federal Highway Administration for the 102nd Avenue Northeast Bridge planning study consistent with the rulings in King County versus Turner and California versus Duffy.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Kurd and a second from Councilmember Dodd. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? Councilmember Dodd.
Thank you. I just want to say, Councilmember Alcabra, I appreciate all of your concerns. The importance of this bridge, I feel like, is very high in our community, especially with a lot of our historically disenfranchised residents and seniors living on the south side of the bridge and cut off from the main part of our city when it's inaccessible. And jokes aside, the idea of it being hit and then permanently unavailable weighs on me heavily, and I know the entire council. With the caveats that we have built in where we are signing this agreement, but not the bad parts and striking through, I am comfortable moving forward, but that is the only reason why I'm comfortable moving forward. Thank you.
Councilmember Alcabra.
I do appreciate that it is a vital, like I mentioned before, I do appreciate it as a vital corridor in our city. My point was earlier that we are going to drop everything and take care of it anyway. So that's what because it is a vital corridor in our city. So, and there's zero guarantee that there will be a countersigning. I mean, and even if there's zero guarantee that we're gonna, the administration is gonna follow through with their signing. Like we've seen that over and over. So. Yeah, what we are doing here, in effect, is negotiating with the bully.
I will speak to the motion. Councilmember Alcabra, I really appreciate your concerns. I appreciate where you're going with this. I think after the conversation that we had, I am comfortable that we're not doing something that we can't walk back. I don't think we're going across a line that would cause us to violate who we are. And so I think I'm comfortable with the recommended action tonight as well. And we'll be voting that way. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I would just add that I am grateful to the counties, states, cities who all participated in King County v. Turner and California v. Duffy, because that is where we're getting legal protection. And I appreciate that there are people across the country who are willing to stand up and speak out and resist what we can call tyranny that is affecting our local jurisdictions. And so with that in mind, and with gratitude to the lawyers and attorneys who are working to protect the constitutional rules of how funds are appropriated and how cities are able to work with the federal government, I give my thanks as I make this vote.
City Clerk?
Thank you. Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Ungulari.
Yes.
Mayor Thompson.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor, sorry. Deputy Mayor Aldworks.
With fear for our democracy, yes.
Councilmember Kurd.
Yes.
Councilmember Miles.
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd.
Yes.
Councilmember Alcabra.
No.
passes 6-1 with Councilmember Alcabra in the negative. Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have an urban forest management plan. Actually, do we want to take a break? All right, we're going to take a break. It is 7:35. We will take 15 minutes and we'll be back at 7:50. That was actually like a lovely respite for my soul after our last conversation. Welcome back. Next up, we have Agenda Bill 26018, the Urban Forestry Management Plan. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, and another decision before you tonight, and one that hopefully is helps you literally breathe easier. Council just last month had your final study session on this and gave some additional feedback to staff, and they are here tonight to just button up everything and respond to any remaining direction and questions, and share with you the last steps they took, and present to you an option for moving forward. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Cameron Colvin, who has been expertly project managing through this process. Cameron, take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. So pleased to be before you tonight to present the resolution for adoption of the Urban Forest Management Plan. The timing of this item tonight couldn't have been better, because today the city received notification that we are recognized as a Tree City USA for our 26th year in a row. And we've also been received our 5th Growth Award as well, which recognizes communities that go above and beyond in terms of tree care and community engagement around this topic. So as the city manager mentioned, I am going to just provide a brief project recap and some of the highlights from the project over the past year. Go through what we heard from our study session a month ago and the revisions to the plan that have been made between that study session and tonight. So the Urban Forest Management Plan has been in development for a little over a year. Work began in January of last year, and a big portion of the first half of last year focused on gathering a lot of the background data to inform some of the discussions and decision-making. And then the second half of the year, we focused more on public engagement and really fleshing out the policy recommendations that are in the plan. So one of the first things that we looked at were existing city operations, our existing tree retention codes. A couple of just highlights that came out of that were flagging some of the challenges that come up with urban forestry tasks and responsibilities being split across 3 departments and the coordination that's required there. Our consultant team helped identify a number of recommended code updates that we'll talk through in more detail later this year, both to incorporate best practices, but also to bring us more in line with some neighboring jurisdictions in the region. And then it also highlighted that, Bothell really benefits from a strong volunteer network and community partnerships, which I think we recognize with all of the great restoration work that's happening. The tree canopy assessment looked at citywide tree cover and found that 44% of the city currently has tree cover. We compared this to the amount of tree cover from 2015 to identify areas of the city where we were seeing tree loss and where tree growth was occurring. And we saw that overall during that time we had a small net loss of 0.7% or about 60 acres. And it also helped identify that almost half of our existing trees are located in environmentally sensitive areas and critical areas that have more stringent protections and mitigation requirements. We also completed an in-depth street tree inventory that helped map over 15,000 trees on the ground, which provide a lot of useful information about the mix of species of trees and different sizes that we see throughout the city. It also helped determine that a lot of our street trees are in good condition with limited infrastructure conflicts, and helped identify that we do have some concentrations of certain species like red maples throughout the city, so we can incorporate different species moving forward to make sure we have a good mix to improve resilience. In terms of community engagement for this project, we conducted a community survey early last year. We conducted a series of focus groups with developers, arborists and landscape companies, environmental groups, to get more specific input on challenges that they experience and what resources would really be most beneficial. And then we hosted a public open house later in the year in October to share some of the draft recommendations and just hear more from residents on the topic. So a couple of core themes is there is high community concern around tree loss from new development. Most residents would like to see an increase in the amount of trees in the open space over time. There's a lot of strong support for retention of especially our large and most mature trees. And a lot of people mentioned that they would benefit from additional guidance, particularly when it comes to private tree maintenance on private property, as well as species selection to help with kind of which species work best in different conditions. And then, so adoption of the UFMP does help advance one of City Council's 24 vision, 3-year priority. It'll also help support the implementation of the comp plan and other environmental plans, such as our recently adopted climate action plan, storm and surface water plan, and our Parks Recreation Open Space Plan that is being updated this year. And the Planning Commission has reviewed the draft that's before you all tonight and expressed strong support and unanimous recommendation for adoption. So at our study session last month, the feedback that we heard from council was to include more strategies or amend existing strategies to address trees in riparian corridors and other critical areas, since, as mentioned earlier, a large portion of our existing tree canopy is within those areas. And also better highlighting partnership opportunities with homeowners associations as well as the King and Snohomish conservation districts. So on your screen are an example of how we incorporated that language to revise a few of the strategies within the plan to reflect those priorities. And in addition to that, we expanded the resources and consideration section, which go a bit more in depth on those topics, updated the implementation matrix to include the conservation districts as a partner. And then we added language also clarifying that our code updates that we'll be tackling this year will include looking at our critical area tree protection mitigation requirements as well. And with that, I will hand it back over to you all for happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Councilmember Dodd.
Thank you. Thank you for the update and all of the work that went into this. I have a really specific question despite the scope of this, which is when we talk about adding more varieties of street trees, what does that look like in implementation? Is there someone in, I'm guessing, Public Works who picks what we plant and now knows the goal there, or?
It's kind of a combination. So a lot of times the city relies on new development to install street trees as properties are developed. If it is a capital improvement project, then yes, that would be something that our city engineers handle. as part of our code update process, and we've already begun this to some extent, we'll be updating our list of recommended species and providing more details on which species work better in certain scenarios, whether that be more constrained landscape strips or if there's overhead utility lines that could cause issues. We'll be able to provide better recommendations for those projects as they move forward.
Okay, thank you. So those updated recommendations are likely to handle getting, okay, cool. Thank you.
Councilmember Anguillari.
Thank you so much, and I really appreciate adding the revision CE.02, and I love expanding this to partner with the schools, nonprofits, and the HOAs and the major landowners. So that's really great. I think those partnerships, I think, will help to expand and plant the trees that we wanted. Last time, I think, did I remember right, 300 trees? Is that what we are targeting this year, 300?
Yeah, our tree canopy goal is 2% increase over the next 20 years, and that roughly comes out to just over 300 trees planted a year.
Yeah, I think if we do these partnerships, I think it shouldn't be a big deal. Even if 5 nonprofits or 5 landowners are, I think. And did I hear last time there is an incentive? There is a budget that we budgeted where we can give incentives to some of these partners?
That's something that can be discussed as part of the budget process. But within the plan, we do talk about potential incentives to encourage both tree retention on private property, but also new plantings.
Great.
So that will be part of the strategy.
Great. Let us know if anything council can help. Happy to we come and plant it too. To encourage and incentivize if that is something that encourages for partners to come forward. We'll be happy to. I think other council members would agree, but happy to do however we can. Thank you so much for everything.
Councilmember Curd.
Thanks for the presentation. Thanks for all the work that you put into this, Cameron, and thanks to our Civic Sparks fellows too, who also devoted a lot of their time to this and other of our priority projects. I am thankful for your responsiveness to the elements that I had discussed last time it came forward, especially on the inclusion of riparian areas and the critical areas which comprise so much of our tree canopy and are important to maintain. I was reading in the packet about the cultural resource archaeological studies, and I appreciate the context there that you did a little bit more research. Your team did a little bit more research, and I'm thinking that's a conversation that we might take forward in maybe budgeting time and maybe at the council retreat. So thanks for the context and for doing that research so that we have something to jump off from. And I will make the motion to adopt the resolution adopting the Urban Forest Management Plan.
A second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Curd and a second from Councilmember Anguillari to adopt the Urban Forestry Master Plan. Would anybody like to speak to the motion?
I'll just say that I am excited to get to this point after all of the work that went into it. Especially grateful to staff for including community voices through the various community engagement means. Really enjoyed seeing that type of response from the community, but also that the community is coming to trust, I think, that there will be opportunities to contribute to and shaping the plans that come forward. So I just wanted to say that before we get to the vote. Thanks.
I want to echo a lot of what my colleagues said up here. Thank you. Really appreciate it. I loved hearing that I don't remember what it was called, but like the Above and Beyond Award for Tree City USA. I would love to see more information about that in my email or what that was. That would be, seems like a cool thing for our comms team to highlight on social media too. City Clerk?
Thank you. Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Ongulur,
Yes.
Mayor Thompson,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alders,
Yes.
Councilmember Kurd,
Yes.
Councilmember Miles,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd,
Yes.
Councilmember Alcabra.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
All right, thank you.
I just wanted to mention, if I could just offer a couple words of thanks first to City Council for trusting community development to do this work. You often see us come to you talking about permits and growth, and this is that balance of growth with conservation, and it's been a particular passion project for me given my background in sustainability and resilience. I also want to embarrass Cameron a little bit and thank him for his hard work. He's been with the city just under 2 years, and in that time he's managed a really large consultant project, worked across different departments and staff, and done a fantastic job. He also was the primary project manager on the climate action plan, so he's really been cranking through a lot of this. And the implementation steps over this next year or so, we're going to really rely on those community partnerships. So I just wanted to acknowledge his hard work.
And I would just like to follow that up by saying it's easy to trust you guys in your department. You do great work. You bring us recommendations that we know are in line with our values, and we feel like you're doing the work there every day. So just thank you for making it so easy. All right, next up, we have a study session down there. All right. Calm down, bro. All right, we've got Agenda Bill 25019, Data Collection and Privacy. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. And Council, as you recall, back on January 13th, Councilmember Alcabra raised a projected agenda item request, and it expressed interest in a topic around how are we protecting residents and how are we responsible using technology specifically around license plate readers and cameras, and in making sure that we're having that conversation for the community to be aware of, and also for the council to have consideration on if there's any changes or additional steps or community outreach that that you'd be interested in. So as noted earlier tonight, there was also then a ad hoc subcommittee that met last Tuesday, actually, with Councilmember Alcabra, Councilmember Dodd, and Deputy Mayor Alders to help really inform this. Overall, I wanted to also give a thanks to our recent team addition of our senior management analyst, Callie Reagan, who did a lot of work to help us be able to turn around a complex conversation in just a couple weeks' time. So thankful for that. And so her fingerprints are on tonight. But here to join us to lead the conversation, we're joined by Becky Range, our Assistant City Manager, and Ken Suberlich, our Chief of Police. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to our Chief.
Well, thank you, City Manager. Good evening, everybody. It's an honor to get a chance to actually address all of you on this topic that I think has risen to well, I know I spend a fair amount of my time every week now talking to people about items such as this. So hopefully we'll be able to provide some information that'll help with some decision making. So with that tonight, we have no action that is required. We are strictly looking for staff input and seeking feedback. We're going to be going over the background, which the city manager actually touched on, so we'll be able to skip right through that. But current city actions and practices, planned and possible city actions and practices, and decisions. There's discussions, excuse me. So with the background, as the city manager stated, last week the Bothell Police Department provided an update on the status of our ALPR use and policies to a subset of the council. We're here tonight to share that information with the entire council. As part of the background, our actions are grounded in council's 2040 vision and resolution 1692, with the goal to address community concerns with data and surveillance as immigration enforcement escalates. Some key definitions that we'll be talking about tonight. Primarily, you're going to focus on ALPR use, which is automated license plate readers, and they are everywhere in society, it seems like anymore. It's a system of cameras related to capturing the license plate of a vehicle. It does this automatically. It does it without human control. It's automated. It takes a picture of the license plate and identifies the alphanumeric symbols on that license plate, runs that plate, and provides the data back to the end user. With that, there's also intelligence gathering, which is a collection, analysis, and dissemination of information to support decision-making and law enforcement operations, and surveillance technology, tools and systems used for observing, recording, or analyzing activities, including cameras, drones, and tracking devices, just to name a few. Again, tonight we're going to focus on ALPR use in this presentation, but there are a number of other systems that are out there. We have drones, we have security cameras, we have robot cameras, GPS tracking devices, and other cameras. We don't currently use body-worn cameras, but those are also technology that's out there. I also think it's really important as we're looking at ALPR systems that cell phone data is also a very important thing for us to look at as we're talking about data being used. The vast majority of the data that I see being used currently around the country is exactly that, cell phone data. It's live data, digital breadcrumbs. Also, we have an attachment. It's attachment 1 that goes into additional information. And it should be in the packet as well. Automated license plate readers. So the current system that we use right now, it's just school zone ALPR systems. And as many of you may recall, we did community outreach on that. We did council presentation before we put those systems in place. With our school zone ALPR systems, it collects that still image from the back of the vehicle to avoid driver identification. And for those of you who were on council back then, you probably remember the presentation. We really focused on vehicles and not drivers. And that was key to this particular program. So there are things that we have to have in order to make an infraction stick. We have to have the blinking lights in a photo to show that the school zone beacons were actually functioning, so to prove that there's an actual violation. And as far as the data is accessible only to the police department, our police department, and it can't be used for anything other than school zone enforcement. That is it. And that was also key to utilizing that particular system. And retention, we have to follow state retention records requirements. And I also want to say that with our contract on the data, they parse this data before they send it to us. So there's a lot of data that's eliminated before we get the infraction. An example would be if there's an obscured license plate, we don't even see it. It's just deleted. We only see the copies of what they've already vetted as actual potential violations. And then we have to go through there and verify that with an officer actually at a computer to verify that it's an actual violation. Okay. I also think it's important to address, though we have an ALPR system. Oh, are we back? Okay. There are other tech and surveillance systems in use in the city that aren't ours. And typically we don't have access to those, but they are in place. And we don't regulate those. I think it's important to probably let you know that there are companies out there that just drive around with ALPR systems and they record data as they drive around different municipalities. It's not our data, but they do that and that data is sold. Our data through our ALPR system is not sold. That system is strictly for us. And with that, there's also cameras and a number of other systems that are out there that are used by private entities and private citizens. So there's a number of them out there, though. With school zone ALPRs, you'll see that there's a number of citations that our officers view and approve every year. You'll notice that 2024 was a high water mark for us on citations. For 2025, we are at 15,613. So what policies are relevant to sharing of ALPR data? And this is something that the city manager and Becky and I, we've talked about a lot, probably since I came back from the Chiefs Conference and I first started speaking about this. So we have the federal regulations. For those that were around, the Patriot Act shortly after 9/11 came into play, and that allowed the federal government to really do deep dives into data that's out there. Over the course of a number of years, the Patriot Act, a number of items that were in that have fallen away and have been changed, and it has morphed. Some things were dropped. I'll say, I'll just describe it as big data scoops, are no longer allowed as they were with the Patriot Act. I think a number of people may remember, like there were cell phone companies and a number of other businesses where they found that huge amounts of data were picked up. So that morphed into some resolutions where they changed a number of the laws, and then that kind of became the Freedom Act. And the Freedom Act really reduced the focus of the federal government's direction, and it had to be more specific. With that, and now mind you, at the federal level, I have no access to that data. That is strictly the federal government. At the state level, we have the Keep Washington Working Act, and I think we've talked about that a lot in a number of meetings. We know what that is. That is really the framework for local and state law enforcement and how we interact with our federal law enforcement agencies out there. And I'll just say specifically, we'll say immigration. We, as a police department, do not enforce immigration. We do not ask for people's immigration status. We will not be doing any of that. That is a federal government's job, and it is not ours. Also with the data, we have the State Records and Retention Act, which I am not well versed in. I have people that are, and they tell me what we can and can't keep, and I trust them. We send them off to training every year, and those things have a tendency, they can change, but I think we've all seen issues with Records and Retention Act, so I won't go into that in any more detail. And then as far as Bothell goes, we have our technology and surveillance policy, and I think about a year ago, I think it was, that I came to council and brought a draft copy that we devised. And the reason for that was that, in my view, I had a number of concerns about how technology was advancing, and a lack of guardrails, shall we say, on how that technology could be used. And I think I was right in some of those concerns. And I will say, I believe we were the first in the region for that, because a lot of the information that I had to compile was from out of state. Right now, I think there's maybe 3 in-state that have a tech and surveillance policy similar to ours. And it's very specific to like ALPRs, where ours is more of an umbrella that covers the broad spectrum of what I call tech and surveillance. And then we also have a draft automated license plate reader policy that I have in draft mode. And the only reason it's still in draft mode is our only ALPR system currently is school zone, and it's very specific. We can't use it for anything else. So I've kind of left it in draft mode, depending on what the future brings. And if we could go to the next, thank you. So a couple things I would like to talk about with our tech and surveillance intelligence policy. I'm just going to read the prohibited uses, if I may. So the department shall not use or allow others to use equipment or data-based records for any unauthorized purposes. It is expressly prohibited for any member of the Bothell Police Department to engage in discriminatory practices based on factors such as actual or perceived race, color, religion, creed, sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, age, national origin, ethnicity, disability, veteran status, marital status, partnership status, pregnancy status, political affiliation or beliefs, or citizenship status when utilizing intelligence and information gathering technology and systems. Targeting individuals or communities based on protected characteristics violates civil rights laws and undermines trust in law enforcement. Trust is huge in law enforcement. If we do not have community trust, we lose our authority. And I think we know where that goes when communities lose trust in their law enforcement. The Bothell Police Department does not utilize facial recognition software to identify persons whose image has been captured by information gathering technology. An exception shall be for locating missing and exploited children as authorized by the National Child Search Assistance Act of 1990. In addition, it is prohibited for the use to use intelligence or information gathering technology systems when personnel accessing the information or systems are not trained or authorized, or information acquired is not for legitimate law enforcement purposes, or technology is used for unauthorized purposes such as trafficking or tracking individuals without legitimate cause, conducting unauthorized background checks, or using surveillance capabilities for personal or political reason. We really tried to do a deep dive when we created this to put some really strong guardrails in place to ensure that the people that we protect on a daily basis feel protected. I would also like to add that under tech and surveillance, depending on if you look at tech and surveillance as the umbrella policy, you'll have sub-policies in there such as our ALPR policy. There would be a drone policy. There would be a GPS tracking policy. And each one of those becomes more specific. And with each one of those, there is an audit component built into those to ensure that we are following best practices and adhering to those best practices. I like to say that we hire great people, and policies are designed to ensure that they make good decisions. I'd also like to add that we are a state accredited agency, and so we're constantly updating our policies and reviewing them to ensure that we are following best practices. All right. Under transparency and community trust, the Bothell Police Department places ongoing focus on transparency and maintaining community trust. As such, the Bothell Police Department has provided ongoing information to the public on the city's website, on our school zone ALPR program, our flight logs from our UAS drone program, and our public safety statistics and data portal. Additionally, the Bothell Police Department is, again, a Washington State accredited agency that follows best practices. Under community building, The city has taken additional action specific to community concerns for vulnerable residents, employees, and businesses. Staff continues to provide educational resources and attend community meetings to answer questions and clarify roles. Most recently, staff have played a more active role in connecting community volunteers with local advocacy groups and are currently in conversations with local leaders and regional nonprofits to discuss ways to help strengthen community well-being. And lastly, under policy review, as stated, policies for every department are subject to an extensive legal review which covers areas like privacy. The city reviews and amends its policies and practices on an ongoing basis to be responsive to evolving issues and risks. Future technology uses and considerations, and this is why I'm focusing on ALPR specifically tonight. The city has been considering the expanded use of the ALPRs for red lights, the red light program, parking program, and speed enforcement, as well as crime fighting. As part of the regular consideration of privacy risk in the implementation of these new processes and technology, the PD is drafting that automated license plate reader policy. Each of these use cases would be intended as ways to increase public safety. With that in mind, any consideration will include evaluation of current laws, community engagement process, and come before council for associated policy and purchasing decisions prior to any implementation. Under plan and possible city actions and practices, the city recognizes we have several opportunities. We can strengthen contracting and procurement policies to ensure resident privacy is thoughtfully considered during agreement development. We can enhance the city's website to provide residents with timely and comprehensive information, including up-to-date FAQs as circumstances evolve, and they seem to be evolving daily. And building meaningful engagement opportunities, as well as, lastly, exploring avenues to influence state legislation in alignment with community priorities. And this is where we have the dialogue portion. What, if any, additional actions would the council like us to consider as we discuss these issues?
I appreciate that you put body-worn cameras in future use, and I've said this in study sessions before, but it's such a long headway, but I could not, in good conscience, vote to fund that until our state's public records laws are modified so that people who are the victims of crimes can not have their videos of the response released as a public records measure. I feel very strongly about that for myriad reasons I won't list, but that is the blocker for me, and it's a full stop. So I'm happy to help the city's efforts to lobby for that and whatever it takes, because I think that there's a lot of value in that layer of accountability, but until victims and survivors are protected, I could not in good conscience be part of it. So please work with us to help get state law changed.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I don't want to really go down the rabbit hole too much on body cameras, but there are a number of things in play with that. I'll just say that filing cases are less likely to happen. I want to provide the level of law enforcement that our community wants. I just want to lead with that. Body cameras have become a tool, and that tool is with filing our cases. So we can document crime or we can solve crime. And I just want to make sure as we're making these decisions, we're doing it eyes wide open. If prosecutors won't take our cases because we don't have body camera footage, I just want to share that that is an actual thing. So.
Question.
Sure.
With the ALPRs, and you said the data is parsed when there's an infraction, and that's the data that we receive. If it's not an infraction, where does the other data go?
From the ALPR system?
Yeah.
It is deleted. If we don't have an infraction, it doesn't come to us typically. Mm-hmm. If it comes to us, we are probably issuing an infraction on it because it's already been vetted through the company.
Okay. So, I hate this. We don't know what the company, we don't know what the company or the vendor does with that deleted data. It's just deleted. It's just gone. Those bits and bytes are.
What I've been told, and when we went to the initial contract, and we can take a deeper dive into that if that's what you'd like to see. But when we originally looked at the company, which is Vera Mobility, they would only keep the data that was an actual infraction. The rest of it's deleted. If they don't, like it's an obscured license plate, for example, then there's no real need to keep it. And again, the concern is that it's only used for school zone enforcement, and that data wouldn't be used for anything else.
Okay, so if I'm doing 37 in this school zone, my license plate would be captured.
Yes.
Okay. I'm not doing that.
If the system's working correctly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a red Audi, so yeah, don't ticket me.
Chief, I want to just reverse that scenario though too. Is it a correct understanding? I honestly don't know the answer. I think I know the answer to this. But is it a correct understanding then too, is if really when Councilmember Miles is driving 20 through a school zone, the camera, does it record anything, or is it only snapping if the speed is above the list?
Well, it does give us traffic counts. So the company will give us traffic counts 24/7, 365. So that's how we know the volume. But they don't send us that data. That never reaches us. And it is only our data.
I had a question around that as well. You stated that Vera was prohibited from selling city data. Is that in the contract?
I can pull the contract, but my recollection from when we went forward, it was strictly for use for this and wouldn't be sold to anybody else.
Okay. And so the data that they retain is infractions.
Correct.
And they're not selling that data to anyone.
Correct. That is my understanding.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I have to start by saying over the years of getting to know you, your captains, and the team, I've grown to respect a lot what our PD does. So I very much appreciate going above and beyond, being one of the first to actually come up with such a policy. I think it's great being accredited. You didn't say it, but it's a handful of departments that get accredited. It's not everyone.
Yeah, at the time, I think we were the 68th department out of 300 and something in the state.
So it's quite an accomplishment. So I very much appreciate you and your team.
Thank you.
Doing the work. I don't have as I mentioned in our last week and in other conversations, the big issue is not how we use the data. My big issue is the Patriot Act, the Freedom Act, or the Freedom Act. These things. It's like the data, if it's not sitting on a server under Kyle's desk, where we have full control over that data, somebody could, like me, could be labeled, terrorist, and it's like game on. It's like that's it. It's open season. Go grab everything you can grab about somebody called Rami Al-Kabra. And this is the issue I have. I know we can have all the contracts, but as soon as this picture is taken of or even the counts, like I don't even know what happens at Vera as they're processing the counts. If that data is sitting somewhere, even if it's extremely temporary, the federal government can come and say, give me, for all the cameras that Vera owns, or, and then Flock owns or whatever, we're going to stitch together Rami's path and go grab him at the Safeway up on 240th, This is the big issue that I have. It's not about, our department or our use of the data. So the question in my mind is it feasible? It's going to be very expensive to do for your folks to do their jobs. For ALPR or drones or otherwise, to do their jobs, can we have that data stored in a facility that we own, the data only we have access to, and we give it out as needed? Or can we just do away altogether with ALPR systems and just budget for officers to be in school zones I mean, that's a conversation we can have also. It's not the ideal conversation, but then we have to weigh data use versus having a police officer at a school zone. I know for a fact that there's one at Bothell High School on one side. I know for a fact. I'm not going to say anymore. But so there is those issues. We can have that conversation. Because it's a big deal, and we are putting, whether it's our residents or passers through our city, we are going to put some people's lives in jeopardy. And I do understand that you're talking about phone. I mean, there's two scenarios you mentioned. One is phone data, GPS data, all that stuff, which we may not have full control over. Although we do have some towers of some cell phone providers over here, so we can have some sort of control. The other question I have is you mentioned there are folks who drive around and capture data and happen to capture license plates. So maybe we can have a conversation around making that something that's illegal also within our city limits. But this is the big issue for me is not how we use the data, is how now the data captured within our city limits is being used for other purposes.
Okay, I'll try to do my best. So as I have my son's voice rattling in my head, Dad, control the controllables. So for me, it's, okay, what do we control? And so we have our ALPR systems, and we can vet them through legal to ensure that we are following best practices to try to restrict that data as best we can. The fact of the matter is, and I can totally allow Eileen to chime in here as well, but the federal government has authority to ask for stuff. Even if the server was under Kyle's desk, he couldn't stop that. They would get that data. Or he would potentially be arrested and charged federally. So I think just understanding that best practices, there's only so much we can do to protect that data. But I think we're following best practices and frankly tighter than a number of agencies around the country. I can't say there's zero risk if we're worried about, if the worry is the federal government having access to that data.
I 100% agree. It's a big risk once the data gets captured and stored somewhere, even under Kyle's desk. I understand. So I'm going to the conclusion that do we even, for this specific use case of school zones, can we have an alternative conversation?
Okay, so as far as data, about 6 months ago, everybody at the table's heard of Flock, I'm assuming. All right. So about 6 months ago, and again, Flock is one of the main reasons I drafted our tech and surveillance policy. And one of the selling points of Flock back in the day was the sharing of information among police agencies. On paper, to a lot of cops, that's like, great. That sounds great. I'm on the other end going, I don't know if that sounds great. In a perfect world, it'd be perfect. But we don't live in a perfect world. And I worked in risk management. It damaged me. And so I'm always like, what's the worst that could possibly happen here? Somebody uses it nefariously, or we're not vetting people and giving them access to look at this data, and it's oversharing. I'm a firm believer, if you want data, you have to come and knock on my door and ask for that data. And you have to provide the required things in order to get that data. Is it a valid law enforcement purpose, for example? Does it violate the Keep Washington Working Act? Is there a signed warrant for this data? There's a number of things that when it's my data that I can require. So I had concerns, and that's one of the reasons why I went down this tech and surveillance policy road. The reality is, about 4 months ago, the use of data shifted at that level, and they moved away from that system, and they moved to a cell phone-based system. And so ALPRs tell me where you were. Your phone tells me where you are.
With big data, yes, and the data is not going to get completely eliminated. The use of ALPRs, for example, there's like myriad other data sources that exist, but we need to control what's the phrase that your son said?
Control the controllables.
Control the controllables. Very wise man. But what we can control is eliminating sources of the data.
Absolutely.
So that in the future, because there will be a future where that data is going to get legally, or I guess it is all legally because it's under the Patriot Act or the Freedom Act. So, whether it's forcefully or, voluntarily, that data is going to get extracted. So can we get into a path where we don't even collect it in the first place and figure out how to solve our problems in a way that has you and your department do their job, but it's not in one particular way, in another way,
Just one thing. I wanted to clarify something the chief said. Did I hear you say, basically, you said about 4 months ago, there was a shift from kind of the flock, like license plate system to cell phone data? Does that mean that this data is no longer being used for what it used to be used for because they have a better source right now? And
So I can say in Washington State, what has happened is my fellow law enforcement partners, chiefs and sheriffs, is they, in essence, I'll just describe it as they shut the back door to flock data. Everybody has to come and knock on the door and ask for it. There's no sharing of information beyond just, I could call up Linwood, for example, and say, hey, I am looking for this car. And if they have an ALPR system, they choose if they want to share that information or not. It's got to be for a valid law enforcement purpose, or anybody with ALPRs as far as that goes. But they control that, and they can choose to release it or not release it. I can just say under the Keep Washington Working Act, it really narrows that down so it wouldn't be shared for immigration purposes.
But we saw the DOL doing a really good job of sharing.
The what?
Yeah.
The Department of Licensing sharing. Sorry, I didn't.
no, I think the deputy mayor's concern isn't what the law enforcement agencies in Washington do with it. It's what happens to the data once it gets in the company's hands. And
Sure. Well, I can only speak from my understanding of like Flock and Axon. That data is not sold. If agencies that have contracts with them, that data belongs to the city.
no, and I understand that, but is the federal government looking for that data still? Is that something that they're asking about when it comes to immigration enforcement, like that license plate reader, or have they moved more to
Well, I could just say I saw it on the news.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm basing that off of. There's 4 apps that they said that they're utilizing and they're getting real-time data, and so it's a paid-for system that they've shifted to. So they have access to real-time digital breadcrumbs, is how it's described.
Which is a lot more valuable than where somebody was 2 weeks ago.
Well, like I was saying a minute ago, it's the difference of knowing where you are and knowing where you were.
I guess what I'm going at is, I completely understand where the deputy mayor or the Councilmember Alcabra is coming from. I'm going to stop doing that maybe someday. And
Why don't you just treat him like emeritus and
Yeah.
just continue calling him deputy
every time I
mayor?
catch myself doing that, I'm gonna say emeritus. are we worrying about something that they're no longer worrying about, I guess is my question. Like, are we worried about something that was happening in the past that's no longer a problem?
Well, as a professional worrier, I worry about a lot of things.
Have you met Kyle Stanner?
So yeah, we have the same initials and the same issues. Again, it's risk management, right? Risk management isn't about getting rid of all risk. It's about managing that risk to a place where you're comfortable that we are doing our due diligence to ensure that we're doing our best. There's a lot of data out there, and we're just giving it away. These systems that are in place with ALPRs, typically that's your data. I mean, I just learned last week that one of the key apps out there for giving data away is Solitaire. I don't know if anybody has, maybe it's just an old person's game that we have on our phone, but it's one of those, if you look at the user agreements when you accept apps, there's a lot of information that we just freely share, and that information is sold.
If we didn't gather ALPR data, like how many ALPR cameras are there in the area, and like how many other sources of information? So like if we don't have somebody committing an infraction on a school zone camera, like in, you know, the cities surrounding us, are there 5 of those cameras? Are there 500 of those cameras? Like basically, if we don't have their data here, is their data at 4 other places on the same trip already?
I think I lost the.
So I'm wondering, if we don't keep this data and it doesn't go somewhere else, do we end up making people safer, or are there so many of these cameras out there that ours aren't necessary?
Well, you know, kind of going back to providing the level of service that our community wants. I mean, it's a tool, right? And what, as the council, where do you want us to utilize technology? We're not going to stop ALPRs. And we could stop it locally, like for what we do. But I mean, there are businesses that have ALPR systems in town that are private. There are businesses that have ALPRs mounted in their vehicles that drive through our town. We have ALPRs on 405 that pick up, I don't know how many thousands of cars every day. And again, when we're talking about risk management, we have the same risk as Bothell, that, you know, the federal government, let's just say they're looking for somebody in particular, and it has to be specific, and they could do that with good to go as well. And so, or anybody else that has an ALPR system, a parking enforcement subdivision of some city. So they can do that wherever. So from risk, if you're not driving a car through any ALPR system, I guess there's no risk. But that's kind of hard to do anymore because they're
ubiquitous.
Yeah.
I guess that's just my question. Like, if we stop doing this to try to make people safer, would we actually make people safer, or would some other ALPR, they got tripped on the same trip?
You can't outrun the technology.
Yeah,
There's no way. There's always going to be something else and something else, something else. And the federal government will still go back to the ALPRs as well, because that's still a font of information.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you. I really do appreciate what my colleagues have been bringing up. Councilmember Alcabra mentioned perhaps legislating the mobile ALPR companies. I wanted to circle back to that point and ask, is there an opportunity for us as local legislators to take that on? And maybe that's a policy discussion over here.
I want to make sure that I'm following exactly what you're asking is around, so I believe you're referring back to the chief had an answer previously of that there are companies that drive around. So I think one of the things that you'd be up against in that legislative attempt is actually, I'm reading from the ACLU website right now, right? And it's in a different context, but it still applies, is that you don't have a right to privacy when you're out in the public. And so the ability to take pictures when somebody's out in the public, it's actually, the ACLU guidance is written contrary of, in a protest environment, of police officers can't ask protesters to not take pictures of them in uniform or doing their duties, right? But that is pretty well established, very well established case law of no right to privacy when you're in the public. And so having a law that prohibited capturing data of, I'm not an expert at it, but my instinct from other conversations would be that would be a very difficult law to see move forward. Similarly, like with the body-worn camera conversation of having legislation on that, of there are a lot of factors in that around influences and established case law that will make that difficult. Again, can we put it on our legislative priorities? Can we make an effort? Can we try and find a state representative who would take that on? Absolutely, we can. I just realistically, it doesn't seem like a likely law to go forward.
Yeah, thank you for that. To kind of recap for summary, you mentioned then sort of the next line of questioning that I have, which is around state or legislation proposed at the state level. I know that SB 6002 is currently in the works, and so we are developing, we're developing our own policies that, if implemented, we would then have to square with what is going on. That's the ALPR.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And then I'm also wondering, like, the conversation of data has been going on for at least a decade, since the Patriot Act in a lot of ways. And we haven't necessarily seen, as residents of the state, a lot of movement in the legislature towards data privacy protections. There's, kind of tinkering here and there and some tweaks that have occurred over the years. But what I'm hearing from the city manager, kind of from the context of this conversation, is that a lot of these concerns are not necessarily within our purview as a city council. They would have to be handled at the state level. And we have a role to play in advocating for or lobbying for, speaking up for the types of policies that we'd like to see to protect the residents of our city and ourselves and our families, right? And so I just wanted to throw that out there as I'm catching that drift from this conversation. And then the last thing is just a note is that on one of the slides you were talking about legitimate causes. And I just appreciated that, you gave us some kind of background information on what some of those legitimate causes are. And so I appreciated that detail.
No, you're welcome. Nobody likes to read policy, but I think I just kind of wanted to set the stage a little bit of how extensive it is. I mean, that's just a little blurb of it. It's super important. Public trust matters, okay? We want to provide the level of service that our community wants from its police department. And I'm no mind reader, but I, as a human being, I can say that I don't want my data out there anymore. And I want whoever is policing my area to make sure that they're doing their due diligence to protect me and that information is sold. So that's kind of how this happened. That's kind of how we formed that policy.
I was going to say something, and then I lost it. Oh, there might be a difference if the mobile private ALPRs are selling the data versus just gathering it. There's a difference between documenting and selling. But I am not a lawyer, but I want to poke at that. The other thing I did not write down, so we'll see if it reoccurs to me.
Okay.
On the other side of the argument, beyond city, when there is attack on our cities by anybody, either shooter or anything, FBI or national, I mean, let's forget about the current federal government or what they are doing for a minute. As a country, if something happens to any city, federal government can have a higher authority to go to any data to protect our cities and our country, right? So in such case, to argue, we should give privilege to FBI and CIA. If there is a data stored, they should have access to it to protect country and the city and state. So is that a fair argument?
Well, as a high school civics graduate, I think that the federal government has laws in place to allow them access to safeguard the nation. And so how these laws are written are designed to have checks and balances built in there. I think depending on who you are, you may be comfortable or less comfortable with those checks and balances. But that's strictly what the federal government has access to. I don't. That's the short answer. So they have the ability to, if there is a legitimate need per how the statute, pick a statute, is written, if they check that box, then there's very little I think that most places can do to stop that.
I agree with a lot of the things that have been said, but I don't know how much left there is to say on this for me right now, but to provide some additional direction, I think I'm interested in pursuing some like state level conversation, like state advocacy conversations about sunshine laws and data collected by in crisis. But in terms of the policy, I think that it's really well crafted. I think that I trust that as new developments occur, you will continue to look into it. I think that one thing that it could be maybe refined would be looking at contracting. So I don't know when Vera's contract expires, but that would present an opportunity for us to reevaluate and see if there's any more protections that could be added at that time, and maybe enshrining contracting language or things that we would be looking for in contracting, either red flags or green flags, things that you would be adding to contracts could be a helpful way to amend.
Well, the good news is we have somebody that's amazing at doing that, and she does a fantastic job at assisting us with our contracts. And another thing too, technology changes so quickly. And so what is used today in school zone enforcement, in 5 years, they may just use your cell phone. I don't know. But I'm just saying, and the reason I say that is I have access to a data portal that shows like what are the most dangerous roads in town? Who is utilizing, who's playing with their phone when they drive down the road? What percentage of drivers do that? What's the average speed of our different roads here in town? That's all from your cell phone, okay? And so I could see in the not so distant future that your cell phone to, let's say, your insurance company is going to tattle on you. That's real-time data, and you don't have to have the infrastructure for that. So I'm no prophet, but I could see at some point in the near future where that technology has morphed into we don't have to put up the infrastructure because you have the infrastructure in your pocket or on your dashboard.
Maybe an incentive to turn off the phone.
That doesn't stop it.
Until that happens, we can work on a medium, long-term path, which is lobbying state government to actually do something about it.
Absolutely.
In the short term, we can control the controllable, which is the systems we currently manage and I guess we're licensing. We don't even do anything. We don't even own it. So can we discuss further the possibility and the alternatives? Because again, you have a mission as a department, and you need to fulfill that mission to ensure the trust of public trust and all that stuff. So can we have conversation around what are alternative solutions to ALPRs that will continue the mission while also minimizing the risk? Because you're right, it's a spectrum.
Yep.
Of risk. So how can we have that conversation?
Now, as we share in our duet, are you speaking specifically to the current? So currently, it's the 5 school zones. Is that what you're in reference to?
I mean, yes, that's all we.
That's
all we have right now.
Correct.
For that, unless we have other data sources that we haven't discussed.
No, and he did provide the inventory of all the different ones. So, I mean, that would be one where, again, I think we'd want to hear from other council members too, is that of interest of having a discussion of turning off school zone infraction cameras, or knowing, I guess, not that action, but having a further discussion about that.
While fulfilling the mission of ensuring the school zones are safe. It's not like turn off or remove the equipment and without having to. It's like, can you have an officer, for example, I keep using it as an example, but can you have an officer, because it's still on my mind, can you have an officer sit there, or whatever it is, a schedule, however it works, or maybe there's another solution for this, I don't know what the solution is, but discuss alternative solutions to having that technology, which has been proven to cause harm to folks. I haven't heard of anything happening in our city, but I don't want to be. If it's preventable, let's prevent it. Because fundamental human right of safety and dignity.
It's interesting, when ALPR systems came out, beyond just like the tolling component, a number of years ago, we were approved to purchase ALPR systems for our patrol cars. I didn't buy them at the time because I had concerns with the technology and the cost behind it, and kind of wanted to see the technology develop a little bit more. But here's the balance, and it's kind of interesting. School zone ALPRs and these type of systems that became automated were designed to be automated for less police contact. Okay. And so that's not lost on me. And because not that long ago, we were having these conversations. So again, from the risk management perspective, what do we want to do? And again, I work for you all, I work for the city. But I think it's also important to understand, like, parking enforcement. Parking enforcement doesn't happen without ALPR systems because we can't mark tires anymore. That's a seizure. So as we look at growing as a city, when we look at the initiatives we're trying to do, and I've sat through a number of comp plan meetings now where I feel like I actually know a little bit about it, that we have some goals that we're trying to achieve. And I just want to make sure we go in eyes wide open of what that entails in that balance. And again, it's about balance, right? And I just want to throw that out there, that it was really designed for less police contact.
Well, and I appreciate that the ALPR system has no bias. You are going a speed in front of it, and it will snap a photo or not, and you will get a violation or not. I think that also solves a community desire in policing, and I am going to do something slightly audacious and try to quote you to you. But when I was in that community academy cohort 1,000 years ago, roughly, the question came up, what about bias in policing? And I appreciated at the time that you mentioned that not everybody in Bothell grew up with Bothell Police is familiar with Bothell, Washington, or United States policing, and that, you know, we know that things have happened from trials and press coverage, and we can't ignore it, and we have to create an environment that's safe for everyone, no matter what the police where they grew up were like. But that inherent trust that you might have, you know, you've been a police officer, and I don't mean this in a bad way, for a long part of my life, right? But I grew up here, and that's different than everyone else at this table's interactions with police, and that's so important. So I hesitate to install a system that creates more contact when we're not all on the same page with what contact with policing looks like. Proud of our department, though I am, that's a very real reality for people. I also think about, we have 5 schools who have this system. We have schools that don't. So I do see officers outside of my child's school because there isn't an ALPR system there. And I don't think we're going to get to a place where we can have an officer out at every school, every travel time. I think about the cameras by West Hill that go off for West Hill's drop-off and pickup, for Sorensen's drop-offs and pickups, which are twice a day, 4 days a week. And so it's almost never off on a weekday. So I am not at the point personally where the risk of inappropriate data access, what I call inappropriate, but which is technically legal, is outweighing, given that we are seeing more real-time data access. And not this ALPR access. We saw 10,000 less infractions in 2025 than 2024. Those are less chances for children to be hurt by someone speeding in a school zone when they're getting to and from school, and that is also very important. And unless there's a magical system out there that is new technology that doesn't have all this, I wouldn't want to go back to individual officers writing citations, because that also pulls them, like we can't afford extra officers, and that would pull your officers away from other things that they need to do to keep our community safe. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think the balance is still positive in the community, but I also hope we hear from people who we represent, because that's the other part of this. So that's kind of, and hopefully I did okay on quoting you.
No, absolutely. I would like to add that, you know, again, providing the service that the community wants, right, and the community is comfortable with. I can't police my way out of a number of the situations that, you know, that we're faced in society anymore. So it's, for me, it's that balance of how do we best use technology and make data-informed decisions. And that's really kind of key. So, and as we're talking about data tonight, you know, what's our level of comfort, you know, with where we're at? You know, how do we make a data-informed decision on this? And use risk management as our basis for this decision. And, you know, what are we hearing from the community? So that, anyways, that's why I'm here, and to try to help with that.
Thank you. I can surface some concerns and perspectives that I have heard from our community that police stops are still terrifyingly traumatic in certain circumstances. And that even children growing up here in Bothell are not experiencing a sense of safety and trust when encountering certain stops. And that is on my mind as we have this conversation. It's also on my mind that we made a data-driven decision to implement these ALPRs. Like we were on, I was on council at the time, and it was to prevent, like the chief said, prevent contact with police, to reduce bias in policing, to have just more, like, as a kind of a behavioral nudge towards being safer in school zones. I still remember all of those reasons why we did it, and we did not anticipate a federal government coming in to hijack our data. We did not anticipate federal overreach when we made that decision. And now we're having conversations about how can, you know, the Patriot Act and the Freedom Act, which were in place even at the time, how can they be used to make some of our residents less safe? And that is frustrating to me, especially in the context of other conversations that we've had tonight, where a lot of time and attention and effort, and I would say cost, are going into protecting our cities from federal overreach at this point in time. It's not even the first conversation tonight on the topic. And to me, that feels like and we already know that when communities are present in ICE, our communities are less safe, or when ICE is present, our communities are less safe. When they are accessing our data, our communities are less safe because we can't provide a service that gets people to effectively slow down in our school zones. When we're choosing between, do we protect the rights of an immigrant from being tracked by federal law enforcement or the life of a child? I don't like weighing those risks. And I don't believe it's a just decision for us to even have to make, because they shouldn't be accessing our data on just moral grounds. And we don't have the protections in place at the state level or at the federal level to prevent them from doing that. And that's what experiencing tyranny is like for communities. And unfortunately, that is our reality. So that is just editorializing leading up to this question, which is, do we know if or when city data is being accessed through the Patriot Act or the Freedom Act?
We have received no information that our data has been utilized. Now, here's the caveat. We don't have to be notified. If it's our data, and this is kind of nuanced a little. So we have a contract with a company for school zone radars, and they forward data to us. I called and asked them this specific question, that if the federal government came knocking and they had the appropriate warrants or requests in place, would you give them the data? And the answer was yes. And with that caveat, I don't know under the Freedom Act, but I know under the Patriot Act that they could also request that information not be shared with anybody. So we'd have to have somebody else that could do a deep dive into that. But so previously, they wouldn't have to notify us that information was shared. That's what happened, I think, when the cell phone companies and Google and everybody else kind of got jammed up here a few years back. They found out that was the case, and I think they tried to change that law, and that then became the Freedom Act. So we haven't been notified that our information has been utilized. That's probably the best answer I can provide.
Would Vera notify you if they got a warrant?
I believe they would if they were.
Is it in our contract?
If they weren't told not to share that.
Yeah, that would be my question. Is it in our contract? Is it like?
That I will just say the federal government. The federal government, I think.
To your point, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Could we get some legal guidance on the Freedom Act and what it did change with regard to that?
You bet.
I mean, I'm sure it's just super easy to find out, but it would be cool to know what is knowable.
There's probably tens of thousands of people in our country who are working on that right now. So.
We're going to ask Eileen GPT. I think for me to want to turn off the ALPRs, I would need to be convinced that it was actually making people in Bothell safer. And kind of like I was getting at earlier, if somebody takes a trip to the grocery store and they're caught on an ALPR 15 times, us removing one of those is not going to make them safer. And in fact, it might make it more dangerous to live in Bothell, because I'll tell you what, those things work to change driver behavior. I've got one right next to my house, and for a couple hours every morning, there is a parade of people going not a little bit over 20 miles an hour right next to a school zone where my kid goes. So I I really appreciate how they do make it safer. To me, that's the big win in it. And I guess what I don't understand and what I would need to understand is how prevalent are these in our community? How many times when people go out in public is this data collected? And does our data point actually matter in making people safer? Is what I would need to know.
Can I
Yeah.
do a counter to this one? I agree. We are in what the iOS keyboard emoji picker is the poop emoji situation. So I get it, and I don't want to diminish. Oh, Amanda's taking notes about. She's going to respond to that one. Sorry. So it's a difficult, and yes, there were stats that says went from 25 to 15 or something like this, the number of infractions, and I get it. It does improve safety. Now we have, at least in front of West Hill, there's speed bumps that even slow things down further. So I get that aspect of it. And the other aspect of it is for me personally, I'd rather do the right thing regardless of what other people are doing. So if it helps, whether it helps or not, I will never know. That it makes somebody not be caught and be separated from their child as they pass through Bothell. To me, that's very important. I'd rather eliminate that chance than completely than having to worry about, well, they're going to get caught by the good to go, thing. So that's that thing. The other aspect of it, I get it. It does make our neighborhood safer because we live here. And it is a very, very difficult decision to make. And this is why we do need to maybe have a further discussion on this. I don't know if we want to continue till midnight tonight, but like a further discussion on, again, we trust our police department. We just do not trust the federal government. At least I don't. So I don't know about others. So this is why I brought up this issue in the first place, and why now our residents are bringing up the rest of the issues, because it's not about our local policing. It's about the federal policing or federal law or not law enforcement. So so that's what the fundamental issue is. And if we do need to have alternatives that do not require having our officers, because I do get that point and I agree with it also. They're like, what are other solutions, and can we think outside the box to ensure that we can make everybody's life safe, not just one group and not another, because we do want to control the controllables. We cannot control other cities or other state highways, but we can control what happens within our city limits.
Well said. And I mean, it's a good combination of the difficult tension between, right, if there was easy answers in any of this, we'd be following a national trend, right? We'd say do that. So earlier tonight, there was a question raised by Councilman Rolcabra of, would it be helpful to have a standing subcommittee through this time? And I think as I'm hearing some of these latest questions or perspectives on things, it does highlight to me of that question that I think would be a helpful thing to walk out of here tonight knowing, or that you'd want to revisit the question on another night, would be of whether or not a standing, whether it's ad hoc in the times that we live in, or again for the next 2 years, however you want to do it, but something more than just when an issue comes up. Because I would hazard a guess that much like tonight, you were visited by residents. There's 70 people who have signed a letter. There will be 70 more by next week. And there will be a new issue is would it be helpful to have a subcommittee wrestling through this? And then would you want to, as a full council, give them direction on what you'd want to see coming out of that in terms of proposed legislative efforts, proposed policy changes, proposed technology usage changes, that sort of thing. So I want to make sure we don't walk away from that question again, even if it's not answered tonight. A fair response would be, why don't you tee that up for next week? Happy to do that too.
I want to jump in on that. I was obviously very recently a proponent of reconvening, whatever, the Public Safety Committee. And I appreciate, Councilmember Curd, you brought up just the fire department priorities. I don't even think it has to be a part of it. That is on my mind, but in a much less severe way than the rest of these topics. And everything from what I said about body-worn cameras to all of this technology. You know, we had our ad hoc subcommittee meeting where we met, and it was really helpful. But there's such, I think, deep discussion and reflection and research needed on all of these topics that it can be very difficult to, in a council meeting where millions of people are watching on YouTube, that's a joke, but it is hard to have natural learning conversations on camera where you can then be quoted over everything you say forever. And so I appreciate the idea of a subcommittee, especially if we focus on, and Chief, please don't take this any kind of way, on policing and surveillance. And as technology evolves, how do we embrace it or reject it? And what does that look like for our residents? So same position 1 month later, yeah.
I'm in also.
I think that makes sense to not include the fire department considerations. That conversation needs to be in public, for sure. And I think we're all in agreement on that, so I like it. And I'm not necessarily volunteering myself for that.
I'll volunteer to be part of it as well.
Perhaps in the most obvious statement ever, me too.
Yeah.
And I think what I want to reiterate of what I heard is, again, the fire discussion would be specific to what's the future of fire service in the city of Bothell. There may be, who knows where this world is going to turn, there may be some topic around safety in the community, safety of residents related to federal policy that maybe there's a fire topic. So we're not excluding the fire department, we're excluding the decision on the future of fire. Because I do think it'll be heavily attended by Ken Superlick, but there may be other departments involved.
That's fair. I don't want to be discussing things that the council isn't comfortable with in the subcommittee, and we can make it just the future of fire service delivery. It's obviously not like should we have one or not, like just for anybody watching who hasn't caught those discussions before.
If you're looking for a third to support the public, well, you have a third to support the public safety. If you're looking for a third to be on the public safety, I would defer to my colleagues, but if no one else is interested, I would be involved. Okay, and you're not stopping him? I did say that. You wrote my name down.
We'll see if anybody pushes you off there.
Council members Anguilari and Miles, like, don't be shy. I know you're new, but you're welcome to raise your hand.
No. I have a lot of things. No, I'm
We are
sorry.
already drinking from the hose. We just.
That's a polite pass.
Yes, passing the buck.
Do we need any other information, or can I adjourn this and tease them off the microphone?
No, I think that helps. I think a couple of things, I do want to touch on a couple of things that I did here is that I think for that group moving forward, we will start teeing up some things around potential legislative efforts. I think one of the things is we'll watch and see what happens in Olympia this legislative session for sure, and the world will change again. But we do have, for all council members, just as a reminder, our lobbyist will come to us in the summer and start interviewing you on what you'd want to see. So we'll make sure that there's conversations before that happens. I think there's some contract review that we would want to do, and we can bring that information forward. I think talking about alternatives of, somebody, there's some smart person out there that is thinking through these issues too, that will come up with a solution of how do we accomplish both things. Maybe it's one of us. That's right, maybe. But if not, we'll be watching that as well. And then I think in addition, it's quite possible that on the request that was added tonight, the projected agenda item, that might be also a topic that we would come and bring to this group. So I think there's forming of a list of things, and we will capture that. We will work on getting the three of you scheduled, and then start prioritizing those topics and bringing them back. Great.
And we have an alternate for the subcommittee. But I don't
Perfect.
think we can do that because they're subcommittees and we can't have 4 people.
Well, yeah, like we can't all go, but like I know that you are very busy, and if the deputy mayor can't make it or has something going on, I would be willing to unenthusiastically serve on the subcommittee.
We'll scope that out, and what I heard, though, is if somebody couldn't make it, it will look and see if an alternate can be there. Probably not just the deputy mayors.